And lastly, part 3 of this look at 2D Saturn fighters. We're going to look at SNK and others, and these are just some of the other fighting games that I've picked up. First being King of Fighters 95, and this has the distinction of being a very kind of odd game because it doesn't utilize the standard 1 to 4 megabyte cards, which means it will not work with the action replay. It actually requires its own proprietary expansion card, which I think has 1 megabyte of memory plus some memory for the actual in-game sprites, which is unique because when the game loads up, it's extremely fast, it's extremely fluid. Obviously, this game, you know, being King of Fighters 95, one of the, I think it's the second one, right? The first one came out in 94, so it's very early on, but it plays well. It is extremely hard. It is one of, just on normal, to me, one of the absolute hardest games, hardest fighting games I've played on the Saturn. You just want to pull your hair out playing this thing, but you want to keep playing because of that fluidity, of the fact that, how does it compare to the Neo Geo? I can't say. To me, it feels pretty darn close, and certainly, I guess back in the day you could have paid the $700-800 for the AES, plus who knows how much for the game. You could have paid over $1,000, or you could have paid $400 or $500 in Japan to play it on the Saturn. So, a really nice early example of SNK's work on the system. Then we have, I believe this is Samurai Shodown 3, and I can't quite read the kanji there, but I believe this is the third release, kind of the reboot of the series, and I have to say I enjoyed Samurai Shodown 1 and 2, but it was, once it moved past 1 and 2, I just didn't follow it, and I find this game to be, while graphically interesting, just a little off-putting. I think that sort of strong, medium, and weak strike mechanic where, if to pull off that, it's very difficult to hit that really hard blow. And if you get hit by it, it takes, half your health or more. I guess it does kind of capture the idea of the lethality of a sword fight or of a samurai fight, because I guess back in those days, you were hit by that blade, one of the sharpest blades on the planet, you were dead. So they went for that feel here. I just don't think it makes for a great fighting game. Nonetheless, I would say that, if you're a fan of the series, there's probably a lot to like here. Very impressive levels. I always thought this game was striking. You had well-animated levels, well-animated characters, kind of minimalist sound, aesthetic, trying to capture the the samurai essence. It's worth checking out, but not my favorite. Now, one of the games that absolutely surprised me was Fatal Fury Real Bout Special. And Fatal Fury, like Samurai Spear or Samurai Shodown, I played it. It was one of the things I did when I couldn't get on Street Fighter. But beyond Fatal Fury 1 and 2, didn't really follow the series, so I was shocked when I put this game in how good it was. First of all, I've talked about the fluidity of the animation. This game doesn't have that anime cel-shaded feel of Alpha 2 or the Marvel vs. Capcom series, but as far as crisp, sprite work and 16-bit style animation, this is amazing. It is so fluid. It plays so well. I never liked Fatal Fury because, you had to jump from the foreground to the background, but even that mechanic here, to me, feels better. And, the backgrounds are incredible. The music is top-notch. There's no static or compression. I was blasting these over my speakers here on the retro gaming setup here in the game room, and it was absolutely incredible. In fact, I'm tempted to suggest that this is one of the best looking and playing 2D fighting games I've ever played, and I don't want to say that, definitively, because I'm not an expert in the Fatal Fury series. There might be an issue with this game as far as balancing of the characters. There might be kind of a point that I'm missing because I haven't played all of them, but for me, at this point, it is one of the most impressive 2D fighters I have ever played. And next up, Waku Waku 7. I discovered this game on MAME. A friend recommended it to me, and it is just one of the most colorful, unique, over-the-top fighting games you would ever want to play by Sunsoft, although it was exclusive to the Neo Geo. And I always saw the game as kind of a mix between Street Fighter Alpha and the Art of Fighting. It scrolls in and out like the Art of Fighting, but it has some absolutely incredible character design, some of the most just amazingly colorful stages and characters you will ever see in any fighting game. And having played it on MAME, I would say a lot of the games that I've talked about in this video series, they do stand up to even what you can play on MAME today. Of course, you don't have the ability to hook in a $300 joystick, and you don't have the beautiful widescreen. But as far as the gameplay experience, the graphics, and the sound, the Saturn holds up to MAME pretty well. In this case, not quite. There's just a slight, there's just a slight downgrade, I think, in the graphics, the movement, and the sound. But of course, if you've never played it on MAME, I think you'll be absolutely wowed by this. This is the sort of game, it's lighthearted, it's fun, there's a charge mechanic, but the charge moves are very easy to pull off. It's just kind of to me, it's always been a game that you can relax in, of course, you bump up the difficulty, it will get challenging. Particularly the Maruru character, the thing that looks like the Studio Ghibli Totoro. I'm going to embarrass myself by not knowing what Totoro is, but it has that sort of aesthetic. Or the crazy, robot with the spikes. On the upper difficulties, they can be pains in the neck. But it's just a relaxing, fun jaunt through this absolutely amazing set of levels. So, Waku Waku 7, I don't know if there were other Waku Waku games. I think it was the sequel to something called Galaxy Fight on the Neo Geo. I don't really believe there was a Waku Waku 6, but be that as it may, this is, it's very, very obscure, but it really is a standout fighter for the Saturn. And lastly, I wasn't even going to put this in the video, but I guess I should talk about Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, because this is a hallmark 2D fighting game for the Saturn. I know a lot of Mortal Kombat fans really like this version. I think it's the best home console version of any Mortal Kombat game. And I just, as a kid, I liked Mortal Kombat. Before I went back for the video to play this, I actually I had Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 on the Genesis. And yes, this is, beyond anything that you could play on the Genesis. However, Mortal Kombat hasn't aged well. I mean, I'm sitting here playing all these other Japanese games, and maybe I'm showing my prejudice here, but, Fatal Fury Real Bout, just playing like, your eyes are melting. It's so beautiful. It's the perfect synergy, between what you're seeing, what you're doing on the controller. It's just an amazing experience. Mortal Kombat, it feels clunky to me. It just feels like something that was super cool and visceral and violent in the mid-90s, but today has no meaning, and for me anyway, and it doesn't have the deep mechanics. Now, I suck at it, as you're seeing here. I mean, I'm getting my ass kicked by the computer, but, there's something where, with these other games like King of Fighters 95, it's insanely difficult, but it draws you in. You want to play more, you want to learn the movesets. I just didn't feel that with Mortal Kombat. I was like, yeah, this is a blast from the past. I guess I could go back and thumb through my move sets that I printed out on GameFAQs, back when, or I don't even know if it was GameFAQs, but I had this kind of thick thing of all the fatalities that I printed out in the early days of the internet. But I was like, you know what? No, I'm alright. Nice memories, but I do not need to revisit Mortal Kombat. So there you have it. Certainly not all of the great fighting games on the Saturn, but I think a really representative sample of how absolutely amazing the Saturn was for 2D fighting games. And I hope to continue this series. There are a couple games that I still need. The second Vampire Hunter game, I certainly want to get the Cyberbots, sort of Capcom robot fighting series. There's Pocket Fighters. There's King of Fighters 96, 97, and I believe Fatal Fury 3. So all things that I will pick up and maybe do a fourth or fifth video in the series with all of that. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I can just say, as a kid in the American arcades, I've said this time and again, for as wonderful as the nostalgia was for arcades, they weren't the best places. Hard to get on the machines, kind of, at least where I lived in my part of the United States, a kind of nasty, underbelly in there, and, kids or, adults who would, knock you out of the way and threaten you. It was hard to get on these machines, and the arcades were the only places where you could play these amazing games. So when I, again, activating the historical imagination, when I sit down and sort of play through an entire generation of amazing, amazing games that I could only play in the arcade as a kid, I really have a new appreciation for what the Saturn is all about. This has been one of the most amazing gaming summers that I've had, sort of acquiring, these games bit by bit and just spending an evening with each of them. And, the Saturn continues to amaze me as a retro system, as, I think the greatest import system that there is. And like I said, I hope to come back, once I fill out the collection of Saturn 2D fighters. I'll be back with version 4 and 5. So thank you guys for watching Game Escape, and I will be back shortly with another video.